Alright, so Wete Omnes. Now this is video 2 for chapter 39 where we're going to focus on the indirect questions. Video 1 had to do with the perfect subjunctive in both the active and passive. So here's our chapter 39 checklist. The top 3 boxes have to do with the perfect subjunctive. We're going to focus on the formula for the indirect questions and also talk about double questions, whether, or, etc. So, what do indirect questions look like? Well, here's an example in English. I wonder when the movie will start. Notice that the indirect question is this part here, and there's a main verb that sets it all up. That's the I wonder. This part here, when the movie will start, is a subordinate phrase. It's a subordinate interrogative clause, which is dependent on a main verb, i.e. it can't stand by itself. And the verbal idea, the will start, must be in the subjunctive mood. The good thing about the translation of the subjunctive is there's nothing fancy, no mays, mights, or coulds, or woulds. Just translate it normally like you would do in English. So what are the 3 ingredients that an indirect question must have? Well, number 1, you need some sort of main verb like I wonder. And then number 2, you need the indirect question itself, when the movie will start. And beginning that indirect question is a questioning word, which we're going to call an interrogative. So you should know what a direct question is. Here's an example. What are you doing? Now this can stand by itself, so we call it an independent phrase. It's not dependent on any other main verb or anything else. It can stand by itself. It uses a question mark, and it's often in quotes because that's reporting dialogue. Alright, now take a look at these 8 sentences and circle the ones which are indirect questions. Please pause the video now. Okay, I hope you circled 2, 3, 6, and 7. These all have indirect questions in them, introduced by a main verb. For example, I do not know, and then here's our interrogative, how long the book is. So is would have to be subjunctive, etc. Alright, here's a list, a short list, very cute, of several verbs that commonly introduce indirect questions. Rogo rogare, to ask, miro merare, to wonder, like I wonder what the next word will be. Skio skire, to know. Neskio neskire, to not know. Memini memnise, I remember. Obliviskor, obliviski, oblitosum, this is the word we get oblivion from. That means to forget. And many other words, verbs, including dicere and narrare, to tell a story or to describe. And here's a list of the very common words that are used as interrogatives, like quis for who, quid is neuter, so that's what or why. The more common word for why is cur. Quo modo means how. Ubi is where, but let's go up here now. Quo means where, but to where, whither, Old English. Unde means from where, or Old English whence. Quando means when. Quanti means how much. That's a partitive genitive. Nom means whether or if in indirect questions. And then the bottom 2, utrum ... on means whether ... or utrum ... necne, whether ... or not. These introduce the double questions. Here are some more interrogatives. These are a little less common. The ones in the middle are the most common of all these. Quare meaning why, quam deu, how long, qualis, of what sort. Quotiens is common too, how often. Okay, now when you're dealing with indirect questions, try to keep in mind when the action happened. There's specific rules and formulae for this. Is it same time as the main verb? Is the action in the indirect question more in the past or time prior to the main verb? Or lastly, is it more in the future, or we call that subsequent to the main verb? Okay, now this page has to do with the formulae. If your main verb is present, future, or that true perfect. Now true perfect means has or have verbed. So anything that's not a past tense verb. So you need a main verb that's present usually. Then you need an interrogative. And then if your action is simultaneous to the present main verb, let's say, you would use the present subjunctive. But if that action is prior, you would use the perfect subjunctive, which we're just learning in this chapter. And lastly, if it is future to the main verb, you would use the future active participle plus your helping verb in sim, sis, sit, sim, sis, sin, depending on the person doing the action in the future. Okay, so here's an example of what we just did, applying the formula in English up here and then translations in Latin down here. So introductory verb is primary. I wonder who is making dinner, so that would be present subjunctive. Number 2, I wonder who has made dinner, so that would be prior action, so you'd have to use the perfect subjunctive here. And the third one, I wonder who will make dinner. That was subsequent action, so you use a future active participle plus sit. So please pause and look at the translations down below of 1, 2, 3 up above. Pause the video now. Okay, so what if we are in secondary sequence? That means your main verb is a past tense or historical tense. Okay, so that means we usually have a perfect or sometimes an imperfect. Then of course we have our interrogative word here. And then if we have simultaneous action to a past tense main verb, you're going to use the imperfect subjunctive. But if we have prior action to the main verb, which is a past tense, we got to go more past, so that would use the pluperfect subjunctive. But if you have a future action to the main verb that's a historical tense, you would still use the future active participle, but your helping verb will be sm, essays, etc. Essentially sa plus a personal ending. Okay, so now let's see that in action. Notice your introductory verb here. All these verbs are in the past tense. I was wondering, I kept wondering. We're going to use interrogatives, who, or number 7, which slave. And then your verb must be subjunctive. Was making dinner, that would be imperfect subjunctive. I kept wondering who had made dinner, so it's prior action, so it's pluperfect subjunctive. I was wondering who made dinner. That would also be prior action, so also pluperfect subjunctive. And last one, I kept wondering which slave would make dinner, or alternatively was going to make dinner. So that would be the future active participle. So look below at the translations. Number 4 is I was wondering quis who pararet was making dinner. Pararet is imperfect subjunctive because we need simultaneous action in the main verb. Now that's we do in Latin what we do in English. We use was making dinner for simultaneous action. Now look at number 5. I kept wondering, mirabar quis, who paravisset had made dinner. So that's prior action to the main verb, so you got to use the pluperfect. And then let's jump to number 7. Mirabor, I was wondering, or I kept wondering, qui servis, which slave, paraturus esset. Esset was, paraturus going to make dinner, or alternatively, which slave would make dinner. Okay, this slide refers to double questions. See page 144 in the text. So the top one has utrum ... on, which is whether or, and the bottom one, we'll call this sentence B, has utrum ... necne, so whether ... necne or not. So let's translate these. The princeps, the emperor, rogabat, was asking or kept asking, nos, ask, utrum, whether, habaremus. Now before we go on to finish translating, habaremus is imperfect subjunctive, so that shows simultaneous action to the main verb. But notice we have in the second part of the double question, dedissimus, that is a pluperfect subjunctive, so that is going to show prior action. So watch your translation. So from the top, the emperor was asking us whether habaremus, we had the money at that moment, on, or if we must had given the money, understood, to the evil senator. Okay, now let's look at B. Obliviscor means I forget. Utrum, whether. Miserem is a perfect subjunctive. There's our main verb is primary. So I forget whether I sent or have sent the letter to you, necne or not. So I forget whether I sent the letter to you or not. Okay, let's review. The rest of the video will be review. If you have primary main verb, you need simultaneous action in your indirect question, use the present subjunctive. If you need prior action to a primary main verb, use the perfect subjunctive. Or subsequent action, use the future active participle, plus your helping verb in sim, sit, Sports Illustrated, etc. But if you have a main verb that is a past tense or historical tense, and you need simultaneous action, you're going to use the imperfect subjunctive. If you have prior action inside your indirect question, you're going to use this should say pluperfect. Let's fix that. And if you need future action to the main verb, you would use the future active participle again, plus sm, says, etc. All right, continuing to review. This is examples of indirect question using simultaneous action. So primary sequence, we're going to use the present subjunctive. Nescio, I do not know. I do not know now. Quid, what? Faciam, I am doing. I'm doing something I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so faciam's present subjunctive for simultaneous action. Secondary sequence, you're going to change your tense of the main verb, nesciebam. I did not know, maybe yesterday or last month. Quid, what I facerem was doing. So again, we do same thing in English that we do in Latin. I did not know what I was doing. Imperfect subjunctive to show simultaneous action. Now let's talk about prior action. What do we do if we have prior action? In primary sequence, where your main verb is present, I do not know, quid, then you use the perfect subjunctive. What I did do, or what I have done. Secondary sequence, I did not know, quid fecissem, I did not know what I had done. Okay, and lastly, examples of indirect questions where you have subsequent action. So primary sequence, nescio, I do not know, quid, what, sim, I am facturus going to do. Okay, or you can make it a simple future. I don't know what I will do. Now, what if you have secondary sequence? So that means your main verb is past time, historical. I did not know, quid, here's your interrogative, what, sm, I was facturus going to do, or I did not know what I would do. Remember, we can use would to express the future from the point of view of the past. All right, that's our discussion of indirect questions. I hope it makes sense. Walete.